Hey, what's going on, guys? You know I'm James. I'm bringing you another YouTube video, and this one is after an extended break, the finally part 2 of looking back at Universe, where I'm going to be talking about the final 2 pay-per-views in my universe that I've gone through: Bragging Rights 2 back in 2K16 and SummerSlam back in 2K17. I honestly have fond memories for both of these shows, especially the latter, but after coming off of that, recording the commentary for that Money in the Bank pay-per-view at the end of part 1, coming off really negative towards that show, and even saying it was worse than Extreme Rules, we might be in for a tough ride here. But enough lollygagging. Let's just start talking about Bragging Rights 2. So Bragging Rights 2 was, on paper, definitely a better show than Bragging Rights 1, because all the matches actually had a purpose, with all but one of them being a Bragging Rights match, and the one that wasn't was a women's championship match that we had built up pretty okay. But the first match of the show was coming off of Money in the Bank, and doing so not all that well, but it did have the build up when the pay-per-view was announced at Money in the Bank. And that was Raw's Mr. Money in the Bank Alex Rain against SmackDown's Mr. Money in the Bank Luke Harper. And again, all the matches on this show were AI simulated, because the whole thing was done in a live stream format, which I really don't care for. So I don't know why I did that in the first place. I really don't. But the match was nothing spectacular. I mean, it was a pretty okay match. Alex kicked out of a discus clothesline. Alex kicked out of the discus clothesline, and Harper kicked out of a Rainmaker. And maybe a Michinoku driver, but I know a Michinoku driver eventually finished him off. Like I said, nothing spectacular about the match. It had a bit of build-up, but other than that, the match was just fine. Nothing really to say about it. Like I said, it had build-up, and it wasn't an awful match, but again, it was AI controlled, and, you know, maybe 1 out of 10 times you're going to get a good AI simulation. So, but anyway, after that, we had the U.S. Champion versus the Intercontinental Champion. This is a match that was not advertised going into the pay-per-view. It was more of a match that came off, or it was a match that pretty much everyone probably, or this is a match that I know everyone probably expected to happen, because it was Bragging Rights, and that was, if I haven't already said it, U.S. versus Intercontinental Champion. And that match in itself is just, I don't know, like, I didn't build it up at all, and I kind of forced in title matches on the final episodes of Raw and SmackDown of 2K16 to have this match, instead of just going with what I had, which, that was a bad decision, clearly. But the match was Roman Reigns versus Adam Daniels. Roman, after his glitchy fiasco at Money in the Bank in the ladder match, he went 4 weeks later and took the U.S. title from T.I.'s in a triple threat, also involving Zack Ryder, the latter of which he pinned to win the title. And that's how he got in the match. And Daniels, I built him up a bit, because I had started to build up the Gatecrashers breaking up after Money in the Bank. And Daniels, after loss after loss, of course, he cheated to beat the Usos at Money in the Bank, and then he would go on to use that same tactic, plus attacking the Intercontinental Champion Batista before their match, because it was an open challenge Batista held, and Daniels came out, answered the open challenge, attacked Batista before the match, and then did the same tactic from Money in the Bank, putting his feet on the ropes for leverage to take the title. So Daniels at least had a bit of build-up going into it, more than I can say for Reigns. So, coming to the match itself, story-wise, again, not really anything to talk about, write home about. But again, it's just something that, you know, bragging rights is typically majority of the matches Raw versus SmackDown, so that works out. And the match, again, it wasn't anything spectacular. I randomly made it a Falls Count Anywhere match just to have, you know, a little bit of variety on the show, so it's not really a bunch of one-on-one matches, which this definitely, actually, the match didn't necessarily deserve the Fall Count Anywhere stipulation, but it definitely worked out well for it, because but the match itself lasted the entire time on the outside. I don't think they were ever actually in the ring, really. And Daniels, at the end of the day, laid out Reigns with a GTS and pinned him on the outside, right next to a barricade. And that was it. After that, we had a TV Championship Open Challenge that Curtis Axel was holding, which was not announced as a bragging rights match. But a few months ago, I actually looked back on Bragging Rights 2 and realized that the match was a Bragging Rights match because it was Raw versus SmackDown. So, and that was between James Merkerson and Curtis Axel, with, of course, Merkerson answering the Open Challenge as to make a statement, or try and make a statement against Daniels, because that was the whole part of the breaking up of the Gatecrashers. And again, nothing too spectacular, but I believe I want to say both men. Yeah, Axel kicked out of TKO, and Merkerson kicked out of a facebuster, Hangman's facebuster. But eventually a second TKO, if I can speak. Eventually a second TKO put Axel away, and Merkerson was the winner and won the TV title. Again, not really any build. I mean, there was a little bit of build up to it, and the match wasn't anything spectacular. But at the very least, it did kind of have a purpose to be on the show, which pretty much every other match in pay-per-view history to date can't, you know, even say. But after the TV title match, we had the WWE Tag Team Championships versus the World Tag Team Championships, and that was the Dudley Boys for SmackDown holding the world titles against the Dangerous Alliance holding the WWE Tag titles, and Dangerous Alliance was being repped by Dolph Ziggler and the former U.S. champion T-Ice for this event, because unlike Money in the Bank, I got it right, and Alex was not in two matches on the same show. But, again, there was no story really going into this match at all, but Dangerous Alliance was able to defeat the New Day on Raw after they beat them at Money in the Bank. In fact, I think they beat them twice, actually. And then the Dudley Boys, they just were still the best team on SmackDown. That's why they still held the World Tag Team titles. And yeah, not much of a story, like I already said, going into the match. But in the match itself, there was kind of a cool little story because Dolph and T.I.S. had never actually competed in a tag match together. It had always been Dolph and Alex. The Dudley Boys were able to pitch a shutout over the Dangerous Alliance and prove that they were, at that point, the best team in the WWE. Because I want to say T.I.S. was the first eliminated, and then Ziggler. Don't quote me on that, because I don't remember the show, really, but yeah. So there was a kind of a cool little story there, insignificant, but cool, nonetheless, in the match itself, where the Dudley Boys pick up the win. Then after that, we had the Women's Championship match between Natalya and Nikki Bella. This was the one not bragging rights matchup, because Nikki Bella was the Women's Champion, so she was on both shows, and Natalya was on Raw. So I suppose I couldn't... No, this wouldn't be a bragging rights match. In a way, this is kind of just a Raw match, but I'm not going to give it brand exclusivity. So take that as you will. But the match again, it was this is the match I want to say. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the match that I got confused with the Money in the Bank match for the women's title, and not confused with the match in itself, but confused with some of the spots in the match, because in this match I want to say that Nikki did hit the two-handed choke slam to the outside, or not to the outside, but on the outside. And there were a few cool little spots. I remember Natalya doing her stalling suplex, shouting out the British Bulldog. And of course, like I said, there are a few cool little moments in the match itself. But again, AI control, nothing too spectacular. But it got the job done, and Natalya pulled out a huge upset by beating the longest reigning champion in the series to date, and that record still holds up today, by taking the women's title from her. And then after that, we had the WWE versus World Heavyweight Championship match between the WWE Champion Triple H and the World Heavyweight Champion Kevin Owens. And the story going into this matchup was that Kevin Owens had won the world title and retained it in a rematch on fair grounds, defeating Daniel Bryan, or climbing the ladder on Money in the Bank, pulling the title down in the main event, and then defeating Daniel Bryan straight up in a one-on-one rematch on SmackDown by beating him with 2 pop-up powerbombs. And then Triple H, having cheated to beat Seth Rollins at Money in the Bank, and then pulling literally the same exact trick against Christian 6 days before bragging rights on that Go Home Raw. So that was the story going into the match, and it definitely kind of worked out for the match itself, because it was an Extreme Rules match, again, just to add a little bit of variety to the show, and it definitely worked out in the match's favor, surprisingly, as the match spent a lot of time on the outside as well in the ring. The computer as Triple H actually used the equalizer, the sledgehammer, but Owens, he got a lot of offense in, kind of dominating Triple H, nailing him with a lot of different moves. The Samoan drop position, the fireman's carry into the gut buster, following up with the senton. The Michinoku driver, go home driver, using the barricades, steel chairs, steel steps. I want to say he may have used this. No, I don't think he used the sledgehammer at all, actually. Triple H did, of course, get some good offense in as well. Mainly that sledgehammer shot right to the gut of Kevin Owens. But at the end of the day, Kevin Owens beat Triple H with 1 pop-up powerbomb, and SmackDown at that point had already won the bragging rights trophy tournament, whatever. I don't know. SmackDown had won bragging rights, essentially, because they had won the Intercontinental, the TV title, the World Tag, and then the World Heavyweight. So Raw had only had 1. And that trend would continue into the main event as Team Raw, Seth Rollins, Mojo, and Brock Lesnar, a team just randomly thrown together by Kurt Angle, the GM, or still the GM, against Team SmackDown, which was Finn Balor, Dean Ambrose, and Mark Henry, where Edge set it up in a way because Finn, Dean, and Mark, as well as a bunch of others, all wanted to represent Team SmackDown, and he had everyone just, compete and earn their spot to be on the team. Except for Finn, who debuted from NXT and immediately came in and said he wanted to lead SmackDown into battle at bragging rights. So Edge let him do that and go ahead and spoil the ending. That did work out, as Finn, Dean, and Mark would pitch a shutout over Team Raw. Dean, I want to say, I don't remember who he qualified against, but I do know that Mark Henry qualified by beating AJ Styles. So, and again, the match was very interesting because I'm pretty sure during the live stream, the game glitched on me, and because after Samoa Joe was eliminated, Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar, the computer wouldn't do anything with them. Like, the computer, Brock came in next, the computer didn't do anything, just let Finn destroy him and eliminate him, and then, again, Seth Rollins came in, was knocked to the outside, and stayed there. The computer didn't move at all. So, again, a little bit of a glitch there that since I live streamed it, I had no control over. But other than that, it was fine. Team SmackDown showed that since they actually, weren't just a team thrown together at the last minute just to, have a match, and they were actually, they wanted to work together for the better of SmackDown. They picked up the win pretty handily. And that was that. SmackDown handily destroyed Raw at bragging rights, with Raw only winning one match. 2 if you count the Raw exclusive match. Technically, Raw exclusive match with the women's title, but either way, yeah. That was bragging rights 2, and where do I rank it? Let's see. We've got Extreme Rules sitting at number 1 at the moment, followed by Money in the Bank, and then bragging rights 1 sitting way at the bottom. Nothing can compare to that. So bragging rights 1 stays at the bottom, I can tell you that. Is this show better than Money in the Bank? There's a lot less filler matches. That all the matches actually did have a purpose. So in that respect, bragging rights 2 is better than Money in the Bank. Some of the stories were better, but in some instances the stories were a bit weaker. So that's a little bit tricky to say, but I still think I'd give the edge to bragging rights 2 there. You know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna say bragging rights 2 is better than Extreme Rules. I'm gonna put bragging rights 2 at number 1 in the pay-per-view rankings. But yeah. And that's what I think about bragging rights 2. It's about time to get into the last pay-per-view that I ever did, which was bragging right. Nope. Botch. It's time to get into the last pay-per-view that I've done so far in Universe, SummerSlam in WWE 2K17. And now, guys, it is time to talk about SummerSlam in 2K17. And this pay-per-view did have a pre-show. We got rid of it for bragging rights 2, but we did, we got rid of it for bragging rights 2, but we technically had it for Money in the Bank. And we brought it back here, and it was utilized a lot better than at Money in the Bank. As we had 3 matches. We had Brock Lesnar versus Cara, Connor versus Viktor, and the finals of the World Heavyweight Championship Tournament. But the first match on that card was Brock Lesnar versus Cara. Now, with Lesnar versus Cara, the story going into the match was, it was mainly just a match booked to give Lesnar, and to an extent Sin Cara, something to do, but mainly give Lesnar something to do. But the story going into it, with that note, was Brock Lesnar was furious that Sin Cara essentially was stealing his gimmick. Because Sin Cara in my universe, for whatever reason, has started doing in AI simulated matches in 2K16. I remember this. He started constantly doing a German suplex animation. Did that very frequently. And that was the story. Lesnar was furious that Sin Cara was stealing his gimmick and challenged him to a match at SummerSlam. And this is the first pay-per-view I can say that I had full control over all the matches. And I really do feel that it benefits, that the show benefits from me controlling everything, match-wise. As the match in itself was pretty good, Sin Cara looked like an underdog, but in the end, Brock Lesnar, in all his fury, hit 3 consecutive F5s, and hit the 1, 2, 3. And now, I just want to... Yeah, some of you may be furious at the thought of Brock Lesnar hitting, or it taking 3 F5 to beat Sin Cara. But no, that's not the case. When I say consecutive, I mean literally consecutive. There was no breaks in between. Brock was just so furious. He picked him up, hit an F5, picked him up immediately again, F5, and one more time, F5. And then after that, he assaulted Sin Cara after the match, dropping him with another F5, essentially injuring him. And that's where Sin Cara is at the moment. But the match did end with Brock Lesnar looking like one hell of a dominant beast. And, yeah. And then you had Conor versus Viktor next, which kind of a similar match. In fact, I almost think that Conor versus Viktor should have that words. But I always think that Conor versus Viktor probably should have been on the main show because of how similar it was to Lesnar and Sin Cara, or maybe include another segment on the pre-show. It doesn't have to be another match, just another segment that could break up some of the action and have, so it's not back-to-back matches with how similar it is. But I did do that, and the whole story between Conor versus Viktor was the Ascension had broken up after during a matchup with Kid and Cesaro on SmackDown. Out of nowhere, during the middle of the match, Conor just clotheslined Viktor from behind, laying him out like a mattress, and Kid and Cesaro would end up picking up the win because of that. So naturally, Viktor is pissed off that his partner and friend turned on him, and they had the match at the SummerSlam pre-show to officially begin. Technically not officially begin because they did have a tag match on the next SmackDown where I fused the rivalries between Murchison and Daniels and Conor vs. Viktor into one on that Go Home SmackDown episode to SummerSlam, where it was the heels, Viktor and Daniels, against the faces, Murchison and Viktor. Did I say Viktor for the heels too? I don't know. It was Viktor and Murchison versus Daniels and Conor. But really, this is the way to officially start the feud, I would say. One-on-one on the pre-show for SummerSlam. And in similar fashion to Lesnar Sin Cara, it was a pretty good back-and-forth match. Viktor looked like an underdog, but succumbed to 2 full Nelson slams by Conor. Which, A, I did not know that was Conor's finisher. No clue there. And B, the match was just too similar to Lesnar Sin Cara. And personally, while on the show alone, Sin Cara vs. Lesnar was definitely a better show. Not a better show, definitely a better match. But in the grand scheme of things, Conor vs. Viktor was definitely the better built up, and definitely, deserved to be, even if it's a pre-show, it definitely deserved to be more on a pay-per-view, and a rivalry I could definitely see myself rolling with more than Lesnar Sin Cara, because that was just a one-off match, and I have no plans to go back to that feud. But nonetheless, that is definitely some bad booking on my end, having 2 similar matches back-to-back. But some pretty good booking I had here was the final match in the pre-show, which was the World Heavyweight Championship Tournament Finals, which was Finn Balor versus Mark Henry. Now, Finn Balor had because of helping Team SmackDown at bragging rights, Mark Henry, and Dean Ambrose all got an automatic qualifier. So they didn't have to qualify, just automatically got in the tournament. But after that, Finn Balor defeated, I want to say, Dean Ambrose in the semifinals, and then the quarterfinals, which that was technically the first round. He defeated, who did he defeat? I don't remember. maybe it was no, Ambrose defeated the Undertaker in the first round. So I don't. Maybe it was no, Balor defeated Daniel Bryan. Yeah, Balor defeated Daniel Bryan and then Dean Ambrose to get into the finals, and Mark Henry defeated Kane and then AJ Styles to get into the finals. So both had pretty tough challenges to get into the finals, and it was a pretty good match. Good back and forth match. Mark Henry and Balor both looked strong, but in the end, Henry succumbed to a coup de grace for Balor to pick up the win. The matches themselves definitely were not definitely not a strong suit for the show, but they were good enough. They were good enough and definitely better than the AI matches I had done before. Most of the time, because there were some really good AI matches in 2K16. Most notably, the Braun Strowman vs. Austin Aries match at NXT TakeOver Arrival, which, if you have not seen that, the 2K16 playlist on my channel, you should definitely watch that match. Because the commentary it's iffy. In fact, it's not even iffy, it's pretty bad, but the match itself was pretty good, so I remember being really impressed by that match. But anyway, after the tournament finals, the next night, on Sunday, we had the start of the Summerslam pay-per-view in Brooklyn, New York, of course, and it was Charlotte versus Natalya for the Women's Championship. In this match, little backstage kind of thing I should mention with the Women's Championship match. I tried so hard to get a good match out of Charlotte and Natalya, and I couldn't for some reason. And eventually, I was trying to have Natalya actually out-wrestle Charlotte with her technical ability, and have her just like constantly kind of like lock in submissions and force Charlotte to like escape to get out of them. And another reason I couldn't get a good match of the two is because Charlotte tapped out. And of course I was controlling everything, but for some reason, you know, it was just it's something to do with the pinwheel submission system. In 2K16, that submission system was perfect. I knew exactly how to, you know, win matches and just make that pinwheel work. But in 2K17 and 18, God, I can't stand the pinwheel system. It's awful. They ruined it. Because all you had to do in 2K16 was treat it like a freaking, what is it, like a metronome? The thing that just goes back and forth. And that's all I had to do. Yeah, like a metronome. Or maybe it's a pendulum. I don't remember. Whatever the thing is that goes back and forth. But that's all you do, just push the right analog stick up and just bounce from left to right, and the AI would just continuously go in and out, and eventually you'd be able to overtake them and win. But you couldn't do that in 2K17 and 2K18. And it freaking sucked, and that's part of the reason why this match was as short as it was. But that little rant over, the match, for being short, wasn't terrible, and Natalya retained. As I said, Charlotte tapped out, so yeah, Natalya retained. Then we had the WWE Tag Team titles, which was the Social Outcasts versus the Dangerous Alliance. And the Social Outcasts were Bo Dallas and Fandango against Dolph and Alex of the Dangerous Alliance. And this match was actually a pretty good tag team match. Actually, a really good tag team match. Best in the series to date, I would say. But the issue with it, there was no clear direction for the tag team division on Raw at the time. And I had the Social Outcasts beat the Dangerous Alliance at the end of the match. And, or not beat at the end of the match, like, they beat the Dangerous Alliance for the tag titles. And while that's not necessarily a bad decision, I definitely think I probably should have had the Dangerous Alliance retain. But at the same time, I don't know, because I've been building up the Social Outcasts really well. And if the Dangerous Alliance won there, then they had beaten everybody on Raw. And there would have been nobody left. Except for American Alpha, who did debut as Raw Superstars later in later on the pay-per-view. But even then, they had just debuted, and they definitely were not ready to be in, like, they were not ready to get a title shot immediately. And I was saying that, remember me saying that, because that comes up later. But yeah, Social Outcasts ended up picking up the win after a pretty good tag team match, with Alex Rain taking the pin. And then the U.S. title match, it was an elimination 6-pack challenge. In this match, I always go back to it in like videos where I'm just talking about Universe or pretty much anything wrestling related. I always just go back to that. And it was between Curtis Axel, Zack Ryder, Sami Zayn, John Cena, Samoa Joe, and the champion Roman Reigns. That was a mouthful. But the issue is here, Axel, Ryder, Zayn, and Cena, none of them deserve to be in the match. And then Samoa Joe, he did deserve it, but he was the only one. But at the same time, I actually don't kind of mind throwing Axel, Ryder, Zayn, and Cena in there, because it adds more depth, more unpredictability, and especially when the one guy everyone would expect to win, Samoa Joe, gets eliminated first because of interference from Chris Jericho, his rival at the time. Then the whole match is thrown out the window. Well, not thrown out the window, but the whole match is just completely unpredictable at that point. Because, Reigns hadn't looked entirely strong, so you didn't know if he was going to retain, or Cena, Zayn, Ryder, or Axel would win. And then when Zayn, later into the match, was looking, freaking white hot, eliminating Cena and Axel in pretty much quick succession, then boom, it's like, oh my god, Zayn just got rid of the losing streak. Is he going to get pushed to the U.S. title scene immediately after that? Which, of course, doesn't happen because Reigns blindsides him from out of nowhere with a spear, and then Reigns takes care of business, taking out Ryder, which, and that ending sequence with Ryder and Reigns, I almost wish I would have built up to that a little bit more in the match, because Ryder got laid out in the back by Axel. So he and Axel were out of it for a majority of the match. And pretty much Cena and Zayn were the two Iron Men of the match who stayed in the ring and got a majority of the screen time. Which wasn't a bad thing, because Cena and Zayn had put on that, classic match on Raw, prior. So I'm sure everyone would have loved to see that again on the pay-per-view to a bigger scale. And that is what we got. But the one issue I really have with that ending sequence was I brought in weapons, which it wasn't no disqualification match. 6-pack challenges are no DQ. But I didn't have anyone utilize weapons to that point until Ryder brought in the sledgehammer to try and take out Reigns. But that's just something a little nitpicky, I would say, because I definitely think I should have used weapons a little bit more. But nonetheless, it was the biggest match I had ever edited to date. I went through, recorded all the footage, started editing it together, and that was the first time I ever used crowd cutaways and stuff, instead of just doing improperly used jump cuts. And the match definitely shows this match is still the best match I've ever created, taking huge inspiration from Mathwis 97. I always say it. I'm saying it again. If you have not checked out his channel, check out his channel. His content is way better than mine, and he'll even recommend you to so many other creators as well. That he says his content, or he says that their content is better than his. So, yeah. But nonetheless, this match definitely one of the best ones on the show, I would say. But at the end of the day, Roman Reigns did retain, but you could definitely chalk up a huge success to that because of Chris Jericho's interference. And then after that, we had the number 1 contenders match for the World Tag Team titles, which was Kid and Cesaro versus Bray and Luke of the Wyatt family. And The only thing to say about this match was Kid and Cesaro dominated. This match was all Kid and Cesaro except for a few offensive maneuvers. I think from Luke Harper most notably, who makes sense. He was SmackDown's Mr. Money in the Bank, still is. But yeah, Kid and Cesaro dominated the match and they picked up the win. That's all to say there. Then we had the World Heavyweight Championship match. The winner of the tournament, Finn Balor, facing the world champion Kevin Owens. In this match, in the highlights video, if you watch that, you would be able to tell that Owens dominated a lot of that match. And he did. Owens got a lot of offense in, but nearing the end, Finn Balor showed off a lot of resiliency. He kicked out of 2 pop-up power bombs and eventually forced Owens to break up the package piledriver to beat him, which has put Balor on the shelf. So that's something, but yeah, Finn Balor showed off a lot of resiliency, so we can build upon his character there. And Owens, it shows that, he can be a dominant monster when he needs to be, but that's not his only character, which a lot of creators focus on, which I find it cool. But when majority of the universe creators focus on Owens being a monster, I just think that's not a good way to go. So I like the way I kind of build up Owens here, where he is, he is kind of like an indie darling that, the smarts love, but the casual fans hate, or not hate. Kind of hate. And then, but there's also, a common hatred between everybody, because, for the most part, he is, this just detestable asshole. So, but he, at the same time, he can, bring out his inner monster and take people out as well. So, I really like what I did there. And we had the WWE Championship match between Christian, Seth Rollins, and Triple H. And wait, no we don't, because I'm a dumbass. Okay, so if you don't know what I'm saying there is, I had built up for quite a while, probably not the most built up thing, but the second most built up thing I would say going to the Summerslam pay-per-view was Christian versus Seth Rollins versus Triple H for the WWE title. Second in build up to the loser leaves WWE winner takes all Extreme Rules match between Merckson and Daniels, because that had been building up really since Merckson and Daniels debuted back in April of that universe year. So, yeah. But this match, when I was getting ready to record this match, I had accidentally deleted, not even accidentally, I was just a dumbass and I deleted 2K17 from the PS4 I was using at the time. So, God, just thinking about this makes me feel like a dumbass. But anyway, yeah, so the match didn't happen because I couldn't get Christian. So I just quickly had the alliance that I started to build up between Del Rio and Triple H come into play. Have Del Rio take out Seth Rollins going into that match. Well, not going into the match, but earlier on in Summerslam pay-per-view. And then I had Kurt Angle come out, announce that Triple H would still defend the WWE title, but it'd be, I said an open challenge, but it was essentially not an open challenge per se, but it was more of, what's a good way to say it, Kurt Angle handpicking opponents for Triple H, and that's when American Alpha made their debut, and Jason Jordan came in, put up one hell of a fight, damn near beat Triple H, looking really strong, but in the end, Triple H, puts away Jason Jordan with 2 pedigrees, and again, similar kind of situation with Lesnar, only in that it did not actually take 2 pedigrees to defeat Jason Jordan, just Triple H got cocky, after hitting the first pedigree and tried to hit a second, and Jordan caught him, and then the match continued until Triple H said, screw you, okay, and dropped him with a second pedigree. But Triple H picked up the win, retaining his title, but Jason Jordan looks really strong in the match, which gives him and Gable a lot of momentum. And then the main event of SummerSlam was loser leaves WWE, winner takes all, Extreme Rules, the match with 3 subtitles, 3 stipulations. It was Murkison versus Daniels, and TV versus Intercontinental Championships. And the match was an Extreme Rules match that at first I thought was way too slow, really uninteresting. But when I went and made the highlights for that highlights video of SummerSlam, it turns out that this matchup to main event the show actually was very hard hitting. A lot of big moments in it that I failed to realize until that highlights video was well published on the channel. So, but yeah. And then like I said, very hard hitting, I would say. Not the most hard hitting match you'll ever see, nowhere near it, but it did its job. It was a pretty controversial way to end the show. And if you got behind James Murkison as a babyface, which I'm hoping you did, because that's the way I wanted to build him up, then it works out. And there's a heartbreaking moment to close off SummerSlam, with him being forced to leave by the detestable heel Adam Daniels. But yeah, Daniels won, took the belt, and that was it. That was the SummerSlam pay-per-view, and pay-per-view ranking time. So at the moment, we've got at the top of the rankings, Bragging Rights 2, followed by Extreme Rules, followed by Bragging Rights 1, followed by no, that's only 3, because we only done 4 pay-per-views, right? Extreme Rules, Bragging Rights 1, Money in the Bank, and Bragging Rights 2. That's 4, so SummerSlam's 5. Okay. So, number 1, so let's redo this. Number 1, we've got Bragging Rights 2, and then we've got Extreme Rules, and then we got Money in the Bank, then we got Bragging Rights 1. And at SummerSlam, where does it fit in the rankings? Well, the matches in themselves, they were all really good. Not the strongest card you could ever book, but it did its job. None of the matches, none of the matches failed to do what they needed to do. They all had a purpose. And the only thing I could really complain about was Lesnar and seeing Cara and Connor versus Viktor on the pre-show being back-to-back. That's the only thing I complained about, because they were way too similar to be back-to-back on that card. And even if I would have, not put the finals, because I think the finals definitely should have main evented the pre-show, but maybe put a segment in between the 2 matches. That way there's at least breathing room between how similar the matches were. But anyway, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, SummerSlam 2K17 takes the top spot on the pay-per-view rankings. And I'm done. I'm done with the pay-per-view rankings. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. Again, statistically, does nothing, but it just makes me feel good. It makes all creators feel good if you drop the like. If you would, hit that subscribe button. Don't have to, but again, makes me feel good. And if I do want to end up pursuing this, hey, the subscriber number does help. What else? Share it up on social media. Drop me any comments. That's the most important thing to me, is comments. And if you do, I'll be sure to reply to you. Maybe not right away, but I'll try and reply to you as soon as I can. And until next time, I'll see all of you later. Bye, guys.